Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on securing and scaling your UPI transactions in the cloud. My name is Karan Mutha. I head the business for Minfi India and a part of the founding team. And we're excited to have all of you as we dive deep into the incredible journey that MobileWay Technologies has taken to transform its digital payment infrastructure with Minfi and AWS's support. For those of you who may not be very familiar, founded in 2010, Mobileware has played a pivotal role in transforming the digital payments landscape in India through its integrated suite of NPCI certified switch solutions, including UPI, IMPS, AEPS, and BBPS. TransXT, which is Mobileware's proprietary API banking platform, has facilitated crores of digital transactions, and currently its payment infrastructure is provided to several brands and fintech companies. With Mobileware's growth and expanding transaction volume, scalability, security, and the ever-changing compliance with stringent RBI and NPCI guidelines has become of paramount importance. That's where Minfi, which is a cloud-native systems integrator and a premier partner with AWS, has partnered with Mobileware to scale their operations on the cloud and secure their infrastructure while staying compliant with the highest regulatory standards. Today, we're fortunate to have some of the leaders who've driven this transformation and are still driving this transformation. Joining us from both Mobileware and Minfi, to start with, we have the CEO of Mobileware, Mr. Satyajit Kanekar. Under Satyajit's leadership, Mobileware has successfully built a robust fintech ecosystem, providing critical digital payment infrastructure to many leading banks and financial institutions in India. Glad to have you, Satyajit.
Thank you. Hi.
We also have Mr. Carlin, Chief Technology Officer at Mobileware. Carlin has played a pivotal role in designing and implementing the company's core platforms and was also instrumental in overseeing this digital cloud transformation and modernization activities. Welcome, Carlin.
Thank you.
From Minfi, we have Shankar TR, a part of Minfi's leadership, leading the migrations and modernization practice within Minfi. He was also the executive sponsor from Minfi in this engagement with Mobileware. Glad to have you, Shankar.
Hey, thanks, Karan. Thanks, Intro. Hi.
So, gentlemen, I think without further ado, let's start hearing from each one of you. Starting with Satyajit. Satyajit, Mobileware handles millions of UPI transactions daily. How has the migration to AWS cloud services improved the scalability and efficiency of your digital payment solutions?
Sure. Thanks, Karan. Thank you, and good to have all of you on the board. I think I'm going to take a little step back, talk about NPCI, RBI, because scalability is something which has come along the way. These are initiatives which have been taken over 10 to 12 years back. I think NPCI, as a company had started in 2008, came up with first of the products, which was IMPS and then UPI. As Mobileware, we were fairly aligned with the roadmap that was set out for the digital transformation or digital payments infrastructure in India. We had an early opportunity with one of the largest banks in India to work with them on IMPS. And that started our journey. So that's where we are called technology service providers as a digital payments infrastructure company. We've taken that forward. Scalability is pretty much the primary objective, right? So I'm obviously going to take up the advantages that we had with AWS and Minfi. But in terms of the number, just to give a context or a certain level of understanding, India is doing more than 1 billion transactions now. We're doing more than 4 billion in volumes and $1 billion in numbers. That stacks up to more than most probably all the countries put together or most of the countries put together. So you have China Pay as in China, you have Russia, you've had people from Europe, US, all of these have come together, and still India has just gone way past those numbers. One of the significant things is also the pace of change. If you really see, NPCI is not that old. Others from an international perspective, the payment processors, without naming many, have been around since the 1970s. And then here we are with NPCI, which is started, let's say, in 2008 in operational side with the guidance of RBI, or the Reserve Bank of India, and has moved significantly forward within the first 10 years of their operations, right? From 2018 to 24 now, we're the market leaders in the entire world from a transaction perspective. As an organization, when we built these products, the whole idea was to ensure that we could have scalability, and that scalability and efficiency is something which is extremely critical, because from our perspective, all the products, right, you can build, and if you focus on the technology stack, you look at how you wish to build those products and have those features, functionality, the entire game is of scalability. You have to be ready for scale. Since 2021, post COVID, actually, the discoverability became easier. And as you know, the entire cash to digital transformation happened within 3 years. So I think the ideal scenario for us, and the most critical thing, was to have a partner, have partners in this journey, where we could actually scale up fairly quickly without having to worry about failures. You have transactions which are instant. This is not a product. This is not a uh, it's not a gaming side, right? It's money which is being spent and money which is being received. So you have to be very careful with what you do. And therefore, the scale has to come with operational efficiencies as well as security. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But AWS came in, for us, allowed us to scale. We partnered with Minfi, where we had the opportunity to actually focus on our business, which is to build the product, build to specifications of the Indian stack, and not really have to really be very completely away from pressures of that, right? So AWS has been great in terms of the products that they have. The scaling is also from a perspective of, you don't have to provision it upfront. So we provisioned it according to what we knew, and it's been a journey for us, right? So I think you need partners in crime, as they say, and Minfi has helped us ensure keeping those scalability aspirations in mind, and then the products have scaled. So we're doing like a 1% of the market right now, and we wish to continue scaling. So that's where we are. So thanks.
Thank you, Satyajit. I think, firstly, I think the numbers are phenomenal. Thank you for briefing us on the numbers and also taking us along the journey that the digital payments landscape in India sort of transpired, right? So moving on to Carlin. Carlin, from a technical perspective, I think the problem statement that had come to Minfi was there were significant latency issues that were being faced. So can you elaborate on how Minfi, along with AWS, helped mitigate those latency challenges and ensured even smoother transaction processing?
Sure, thanks. So primarily we had a lot of latency problems because we were on-prem, and with the demonetization, COVID, and the adoption of QR in India, which is, I think, so one of the leaders in QR adoption, brought in a huge spike in transaction processing, especially at peak hours. And peak hours vary based on the region. It might be in one place, it might be 8 to 9, in another place, it might be in the early mornings when people listening. So Minfi, along with AWS, helped us with various concepts like elastic load balancing, the auto scaling part, which really helped us with scaling, not provisioning infrastructure at a upfront, and efficiently helping us in operations also with this. And this all was, I wouldn't say at a button click, because that is how Amazon works, but there are a lot of solutions to various things, and Minfi helped us to get the right solution. What also helped us with Amazon was their tech when it comes to high performance, low latency database like Aurora and Elastic Cache kind of concepts, where it helped us to cache the data which we were frequently retrieving for the banks. That helped us improve in latency and performance. The transition was very smooth, and that was all thanks to the guidance of AWS and Amazon, which helped us come up with a conclusive solution. Thanks.
Shankar, I think you've been at the forefront of many complex migrations, none more than migration of mission critical workloads like UPI transaction systems. So what were the best practices that Minfi took into account to ensure this transaction was smooth, secure, and without any disruptions?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Karan. So handling mission critical workloads like UPN transactions are uh, definitely not like just a DC exit project, right? So we'll have to be focusing a lot on the security compliance, etc. So we understand the critical nature of TransXT, and TransXT is already hosted for other banks on-prem, right? So this TransXT as a product is not new, right? So what's new is that we are hosting it on AWS. So what we did is we took a three-prong approach. We devised out a detailed impact analysis as a part of our discovery phase, right? So we meticulously analyzed the core system, which is the TransXT, identifying the dependencies and the critical components in the potential risk, right? So it talks to core banking systems, it talks to the NPCI, right? So understanding the architecture of uh, the how it is hosted. So we spent a lot of time in doing the impact analysis. And from a performance perspective, as Satyajit mentioned, right? So it's not about millions of transactions, it's about billions of transactions. We need to ensure that nothing fails, right? So performance is a key parameter here. What we did is we conducted rigorous performance and load testing in the secured AWS landing zone, what we created. We stimulated for the peak demands and ensure this cloud environment on AWS could handle the mobile wires, traffic and volume, right? What is anticipated. So, and the last thing, which is more critical, is towards the security and compliance audits, because we all know that this entire system or the entire business workflow has to be audited by RBI, right? So it's under the scrutiny of RBI. So we conducted a thorough security and compliance audit to ensure the AWS environment, what is getting provisioned, is meeting the stringent RBI requirements, right? So as mobileware had some of the banks already hosted on AWS, so we picked it up from where they are actually working on right now, from if they have any defined objectives, what they're trying to meet from a security point of view, or if there are any predefined problems, what they're trying to solve, right? So we kind of considered that. So we worked with Carlin and his team, understand the product architecture and the integrations, right? And then devised out the entire migration plan.
Thanks, Shankar. Coming back to security and compliance, which we started off by saying is of paramount importance. And Satyajit, I think you did mention about having more partners in crime on this journey that you've taken. But on a lighter note, I think it's about having the right partner with you who can avoid people facing financial crimes in this scenario. So what are the key security and compliance benefits that Mobileware has experienced moving to AWS, especially regarding RBI and NPCI guidelines?
Sure, thanks, Karan. So I think, maybe again, I'm going to take a little bit of a background check about what's going on. Internationally, as you've seen, you've had Visa, MasterCard, you've had PayPal, Stripe, Square as companies which have come up with innovations. The regulator typically forms the role of a like reactive and passive role, wherein they're supposed to make sure that whatever is being rolled out as an innovation in the country can actually be deployed as a product which can be used by their consumers. I think it's a very different scenario in India, and it's a very uniquely positioned one, which is good for the nation, which is great and has served us well. Is the fact that RBI has come up with the innovations. They have come up with the fintechs, the uh, startups and companies like ours who have been obviously providing inputs to the NPCI, but the products have been actually governed by a security guideline or a compliance guideline from the RBI itself. So it's a little bit of a coexistence rather than actually being like a just watchdog. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort that has happened in India, which is great for the entire ecosystem, because you are well aware of the products that are coming up, what the security guidelines would be, what would be the compliances that are expected, right? So there is the biggest difference that we have seen while we were working in this industry for the past 10 years, 12 years. There has been a little bit of a collaborative effort, and that's helped us immensely. Having said that, as a DNA mobileware, we've been in principle, in faith, wanted to be compliant all the time. We wanted to make sure that the security is taken care of. You always have this notion of security and compliance is at your level. As a startup or as a small, medium-sized company, you come up with certain level of understanding. But eventually, you need partners. You need people who've done it before, people who've been in the industry for much longer. We were a startup, or we started our journey maybe 5-10 years back on security, but they were experts. They were stalwarts who've always been there. So from a AWS perspective, international exposure, having done this before, setting up systems for the largest to the smallest, from a government to any corporate that has been there in this world, there has been AWS, which is also a primary cloud hosted solution. So the cloud hosted solution, security, compliances were vastly different from an on-prem, right? On an on-premise kind of a solution, you had the banks or you had the regulated entities having to do it themselves or outsource it in a smaller way. The outside world really didn't have that much of an exposure. So people like AWS, and then comes Minfi, where we had to partner with somebody who again had the experience with AWS. Even if you choose a great cloud partner, it doesn't mean that we will still get it right the first time. We need partnerships which wherein people, their expertise, their exposure to such episodes that have happened in the past can be taken care of and help us grow. So I think we've taken security and compliance is extremely important. After moving into AWS, we've been able to significantly kind of enhance our security posture. There are built-in security features like encryption at rest and transit and help us meet the stringent RBI and NPCI guidelines, right? Eventually, you want to be in line and in the way we deliver value. The security and compliance becomes the most important things. The other thing is obviously with AWS, we've also had the secure API gateways, authentication side of it, or continuous monitoring help. All of it, which is combined as a AWS and Minfi solution, right? So this has helped us stay compliant with the regulatory guidelines while maintaining like a highest level of security for our users or our customers. So that's been our journey, and that's how we've done it and taken security as maximum importance or significance. So thanks.
Great to see, Satyajit, that the partnership has worked out really well, and eventually it has also translated into benefits that the end customer can see. Uh, Moving on to you, Carlin, and getting slightly more technical, right? Security and compliance is also very important in operations, and the baselining of it is the first step. So, can you share how securing the landing zone set up by Minfi along with AWS enhanced mobileware's security posture and also ensured adherence to the regulatory standards?
Sorry, security is very critical for us since we provide systems to banks and banks are governed by RBI. So the security landing zone provided by Minfi within AWS has been a critical component ensuring our compliance with regulatory standards. The security zone not only enforces data encryption, but also makes sure that sensitive data is encrypted both at rest and in transit. With using various services which Amazon provides, like the Amazon Maze and CloudTrail, the landing zone helps prevent unauthorized data exposure, which is a key factor to build confidence in a bank and for us also that the data is not only protected, there is no exposure to any external entities. This brings in this compliance by design and enables security baseline enforced across all services and applications that we run in AWS. And Minfi has helped us a lot in designing and configuring this as per the required standards. Also by doing segregation of workloads, like segregating the UAT, the production, the dev for across accounts and passing it to the landing zone, we know that the same compliance and security configuration is applicable to all our workloads. That gives us a lot of peace of mind that thing done in production is not missed in UAT and vice versa. So that way we are at ease knowing that Minfi is configuring and monitoring the landing zone completely. Additionally, with Amazon tools like CloudTrail and GuardDuty, we have real-time visibility into our infrastructure, enabling us to proactively detect, mitigate any security threats while ensuring full compliance to RBI and NPCI requirements, and thus helping the bank also. Thanks.
Thanks, Carlin. Yeah, certainly I would agree. I think landing zone is also an extremely important service to sort of speed up your scale of operations. But Shankar, I think you did mention about working massively in the FSI space, and what we've seen earlier is that while AWS has an elaborate suite of security services, it may not be enough to address the RBI compliance mechanisms. So how did Minfi, as a cloud native systems integrator, overcome these challenges to ensure mobileware's cloud environment remained secure and compliant holistically?
Yeah. So what's important here is, so mobileware was already hosted on AWS, right? So mobileware Trans XT was already hosted on AWS, and they had two leading banks, right, were running on AWS when we started engaging with mobileware. So what we did is, during the discovery phase, right? So we worked with Carlin and his team. So mobileware team already had their learnings from a shortcoming and gaps perspective in the architecture and operations. So we started defining the baseline focused on security, compliance, and resiliency, right, and addressing those gaps. So to your point of what Minfi does, right, as AWS service, native services are available, right? That's where a partner role come into picture. So what AWS gives is suite of services, and it's the partner responsibility to orchestrate it right for the customer and ensuring we understand their performance requirements, the security requirements, right, and so on and so forth. So that's where we worked with Carlin and his team. And so during our discovery phase, what's unique about our discovery approach in mobileware is, Minfi, we have our own IP, which is Swayam, which is a cloud management platform, which has the automated well-architected framework review, encapsulated in it, right? So what we did is, to do the baseline. So here, as Trans XT is already on AWS for a couple of banks, now a start point is to ensure how do we arrive at the right baseline, right? So what we did is, we used Swayam, ran a well-architected framework review, emphasizing more on the security, reliability, and operation excellence. We took those benefits or the outcomes and started working from a mitigation perspective. So very specific to the landing zone, right? So the banks which was already hosted by mobileware on were not having a landing zone. So we helped in architecting a landing zone which is going to help them to secure and onboard more banks, right, onto the platform. So another thing what we did is, we very specific to the compliance and regulatory requirements, unlike a HIPAA, right, or some other regulatory laws where you actually have a checklist, right? So in case of this, we only have a RBI guideline. We don't have a defined, compliance like a IPA. So what we did is, Minfi, we worked with mobileware team. We handcrafted a baseline checklist, which is as per the RBI compliance requirement, right? So we started working on security across all the 7 layers. As Satyajit and Carolyn pointed out, right? It's not just about data's transit addressed, but across all the 7 layers, and helped mobileware to achieve what they are supposed to achieve from a security and the compliance perspective. So that's what we did during the design phase.
Thanks, Shankar. I think we did speak about security, compliance, and the mechanisms that we've taken to ensure that all those are in place. But Satyajit, I'm sure every CEO is concerned about operational efficiency and cost management, right? I think that is probably something that you go prepared with in every board meeting that you have to attend. So what kind of cost savings and operational efficiencies has mobileware technologies realized as a result of this digital transformation exercise onto the cloud?
I think it's one of the favorite requirements of every board meeting, and yeah, I mean that's what you live by and you die by. So, from a bottom line perspective, right? It's I think there are multiple ways, but I'll start with AWS first, right? Over a period of 10, 12 years, our focus area was to try and build products, build cutting edge products, right? The biggest challenge that you face is when you are in an R&D or an innovation mode, you need to be able to do sandbox, you need to be able to do UAT setups, you need to have extensive hardware at your disposal, and that too with the software that will run at the best possible way. These could be proof of concepts for banks. This could be products which have been kind of already thought of, but even as a Transaxi, as a platform that we built, right? It wouldn't have been possible if we had to procure all that hardware on a prem or a like a data center level. We wouldn't have ever known what sort of volumes to expect back in 2017, 18. It all came to thanks to the whole pay-per-use kind of models that were available to us. So the cloud hosting partnership, I think, is my favorite, and I think Kalin and I would both agree. Uh, as a growing organization, when you're trying to focus on products and development, you eventually need a test bed. You need a partner where we got a lot of credits from AWS. We started there. We managed to get that setup done. With those came all the learnings of from whatever we actually discussed right now, from a scalability perspective, peak performance, right? None of it can be tested on desktops. You have to have something where you have industry grade production systems where you will be able to manage that, right? It becomes like a no starter of it. You can't start without having some level of infrastructure in place. So I think that is where the operational efficiencies or cost savings had happened for us. We actually built on AWS. We went and took a decision fairly early. So even before most of the players in the market were trying out cloud hosted solutions, we were first up on cloud, and we actually decided to build on cloud, use the entire facilities at our disposal, the products, the tools, the automations that were already there, and built it to scale. And that was the whole idea, that if we knew that the investment is going to be in our just the experience and understanding of the domain, and the monies is going to come when it scales. So it had to be low investment first from anything other than the development of our own products and the entire scaling up. And we've kind of proud that we took that decision, helped us grow. We've come to a certain level of understanding now where we have a bottom line. We're one of the very few profitable fintechs or startups or semi medium sized companies in the country, and I think I'll be fairly transparent. It's obviously a lot to do with the partnerships that we built, and AWS kind of from their pay per use is one product that I keep talking about. But yeah, anything where you could actually partner, scale, and then have to pay as you grow, right? That made the best use of our bottom line, and could reinvest. And we are an R&D company, so if you want to really do R&D, not necessarily a product will have a customer first. You actually build upfront. You want to actually figure out what's the best way to do it, and that for that you need fairly expensive workflow management systems or orchestration engines, and those are all at our disposal, and kind of help us come to this point. So yeah, I mean, favorite topic, but yeah, bottom line was good to have a profitable years along the line. Thanks.
And I sincerely hope you remain that way. You just keep increasing your profits. Great to know. I'm sure this would be immense learning for a lot of fintech companies who are in their early stages, right? And yeah, I think one of the learnings that is clearly available is built on cloud or specifically on AWS, I think is a very important decision that has to be made. But yeah, I think moving on to Carlin. Carlin, I think there's an extremely famous joke in the tech space, right? Wherein it's said that, a man becomes from rich to poor because he's left an EC2 instance, right? And has just forgotten to shut it. So, yeah, idle resources, over provisioned resources was one of the other challenges that mobileware faced before the migration. Right. So, how did this cloud setup help in optimizing resource utilization and improving operational performance?
Sure. So, like Satyajit said, he was bang on. Basically, this is one of our favorite topics because, along with efficiency and performance, you also need to be cost centric. You cannot just have a inflatable bill, like you mentioned, the EC2 instance kind of thing. Prior to this, on premises, we were either over provisioned or the banks used to say, let's start small. And when the load comes, it becomes, will increase the infrastructure, which is not a piece of cake in the bank. It has to go through multiple checks and balances, multiple approvals. That we saw a time frame of about 15 to 20 days to something as simple as getting a new server and getting a new IP for the server. Also, with COVID in the picture, not many would know that RBI's first in notice to everybody was increase your capacity by 50%, and we were in a lockdown. So people who were banks which were running on infrastructure, they were like, from where do we get the servers? Okay, so we being on the cloud really helped us big time there, because we were like, you want more capacity, we'll increase it. Then also we are in an auto scaling kind of thing. Like Satyajit mentioned, there is a lot of R&D happening. There is multiple ways you can achieve a goal. So we are constantly innovating, and for that, it's very difficult to have an on-prem setup where you would set up a server for something as simple as running a queuing system, which comes out of the box in Amazon with various flavors, MSMQ, RabbitMQ, something like moving from a traditional RDS database to an Amazon Aurora managed service, okay, which comes out of the box again from Amazon. So all this was how we ported from our data center centric kind of software into Amazon. Data R&Ds went through the sandbox, UAT, load testing, which was another environment, and then eventually said, okay, this becomes a product feature, and in future, all our all our products, starting with UPI, etc., move on to production on the new functionality, which is the Amazon services, etc. Even small bits and pieces like cache and all, which we went from an on-prem Redis to an Amazon managed Redis of Elastic Cache, is a good example of how it helped us with also starting small and scaling up as our load went up, because there is a lot of visibility and monitoring which comes out of the box with Amazon. So auto scaling, on demand, resource allocation was one of the primary features. And right now we no longer need to bother about provisioning hardware or going from a 4 core to an 8 core or improving the RAM on this thing. We do not need to see whether virtualization will be a problem because the hardware has capacity or no. Right now for us, it is okay. You need this, you just get your internal approvals and you move ahead. And that helps us give good performance. And if we have good performance, the banks are happy, everyone is happy, and Satyajit is happy.
Awesome,
Thanks.
Carlin. Yeah, I think one thing is to sort of migrate onto the cloud, but one thing is to also realize the true potential of cloud, right? So I think starting small, auto scaling are, I think, the true tenets of how you actually realize the true value of cloud. Shankar, I think simplicity has been at the core of our cultural values as an organization, right? And I think apart from a lot of customer centricity, I think simplicity is something that we get to the table. So, and operational efficiency is not just about cost savings, but also reducing complexity. So, what was Minfi's approach in optimizing the interconnected systems like NPCI, core banking systems, and TransXT during the migration?
Yeah, as you rightly said, it's about simplifying complexity, right, and improve agility. So here's what Minfi did when we started engaging with them during our discovery phase, right? So we spent a lot of time with Carolyn and team on understanding the interdependencies between this ecosystems, because so we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have NPCI, we have core banking systems, and then we have TransXT in the middle, right? So we spent a lot of time in mapping the ecosystem. We started by creating a comprehensive map of all these interconnected systems, right? Including NPCI, the core banking systems of the banks, and TransXT. So it helped us to understand the intricate relationship and the data flows, right? So this kind of helped us to potentially identify the point of frictions, right? And which can be simplified further by us. So it helped us in identifying the bottlenecks, and so we then analyze the data flows, the transaction process, which points to the bottlenecks, right? And then helped in optimizing the efforts, putting our efforts towards optimizing, solving those bottlenecks. Another important point here is that's where the key thing cloud comes into picture, right? So leveraging cloud services wherever you can go serverless, right? So we adopted serverless architecture for some components of the system, right? So that this kind of helps to eliminate the need for a traditional server management and reduce the operational complexity, right? And there are a lot of API integrations, right? So this entire workflow or data flow is through APIs, right? So we leveraged APIs to create more flexible and efficient integration between these different systems, allowing for a smoother and data exchange and better communication. So finally, it's not just about one time of you help the customer to re-engineer the architecture so that it is you achieve the maximum possible operational efficiency. It's an ongoing thing, right? So from a continuous monitoring and optimization perspective, so we implemented robust monitoring tools to track the performance, right? Identify the bottlenecks and ineffectiveness, and in order to adjust the configurations accordingly. So, and we, as mobileware is also managed by Minfi as a MSP in the capacity of an MSP. So they are onboarded in our cloud management system, SWAYAM. So we defined a regular optimization cycles, right? Set up the regular optimization cycle to do this as a regular activity, not just as one time. So yeah, so this is our approach in helping mobileware, right? In order to gain larger operational efficiency.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar. And I think, Satyajit, you did mention about, being an early adopter of the cloud technology. So, of course, one thing is to sort of get onto that bandwagon very early. But, once you got onto the bandwagon, I think there are immense learnings, but it's also sort of important to stabilize, your operation, stabilize the system. So apart from, I think, latency issues, cost savings, optimal resource utilization, I think one of the key goals of this project was to also enhance system observability.
Right.
Again, how is this engagement partnering with Minfi and AWS helped mobileware in addressing challenges related to full system observability?
Sure. So I think, a lot of these points did get covered in the, like what Shankar was mentioning about the tools that have been used to actually bring us on board a certain product and help us get that done. But I think I'll break it down into two parts. One is internal observability or monitoring tools, alerting tools that we need from an organization perspective. Second is also from our customers' perspective, that they have put faith in us to actually manage their systems. These systems would have been, so just as an example, one of the largest, I think Shankar did mention about them, one of the largest PSUs out of Northern India came up with an RFP. Their objective was that they were struggling with the existing vendor, which was on-premise, and they wanted to go onto cloud. So this would have been their first move or foray into a cloud-hosted solution. And being sensitive to that, the RFP actually included all sorts of monitoring, alerting things, because they wanted to have information about their systems. Eventually, the customer is of the bank. We are we caretakers of that information. We're the caretakers of that transaction. So in general, what we've seen is that, and it is our responsibility, not only have we seen it, but it's our responsibility to ensure information inward and outward. At the end of the day, we've had to make sure that as much as we grew with support systems, so like you did mention about customer centricity, it comes at a cost and at a certain level where we have to ensure we implement 24/7, 365 days support teams, right? But it's not necessarily the only solution. You just cannot scale in numbers. You've got to scale in automation. You've got to scale in the tools that you have to be able to monitor and alert you. So I think Minfi's, when we started partnering with Minfi, the objective was the same. What is the information that is currently in data form, and we can convert that to data, can help us take some decisions, which are from the peak performances, wherever there is anything which you need to take care of from a potentially systems going down, right? That you understand that there are peaks and troughs, but you need to actually be able to take the peaks at the earliest, right? And get the alerts as 80% utilization, 90% utilization. At my personal level, I think it's fairly critical. It's unbelievably important that you run a 24/7 system, and if you want to sleep well, you need the information at your tips. You just need to have a laptop open and have that information. Be a user on that. As a bank is a user, you need to be a user as management, and just have a look at it. It gives you indicative understanding of what's happening. It gives you the information. So I think the basic premise, right? It is, if you are taking something as an outsourced activity from anybody, I mean, it could be any industry, far more critical when there are transactions, successes, failures, pending transactions. It's all money, right? People want to know what's going on a day-to-day basis, and we need to know as well. And this partnership really brought us the full advantage or benefit of having somebody out there looking after our data, looking after those transactions, ensuring some level of commitment. When things didn't go right, we should be the first ones, not the customer knowing it. We need to be ones to react and take care of it, like priority-wise and proactively. So I think all of these, right, are just about just being able to know that there are systems in place which will take care of the information being transferred, communicated, and taken action against. So yeah, fairly critical, and it's worked really well for us over the last few years, and I'm sure we'll keep improving and adjusting it to ensure better customer centricity. Thanks.
Great to know. I think great to know mobile-based and customer centricity is almost, at par or even better than I think what we follow internally along with AWS. But I think, Carlin, you did mention about, banks specifically being one of the most difficult customers, and that comes with a lot of criticality, critical information that they handle. They'd like to start small. So I'd like to probably just take an example here of, say, Suryodaya Bank, right? So you migrated them from on-premises to cloud, and I'm sure that must have been a significant challenge. It must have been a lot of heavy lifting there. But could you explain, now that the transition has happened, how did it help improve, operational performance, and also, has helped mobileware to, sort of ensure that they go through uninterrupted transaction processing?
Sure, sure. So, Suryodaya Bank is a good example. It was an on-prem solution. Their main problem we faced, at least with them, was scalability and latency. And because it was hosted on a data center, there was no ownership, whether it was a latency problem at NPCI, core banking, or the data center. So things went round and round. That's where Minfi helped us a lot. I think so. Suryodaya Bank would be a right example for a migration because we did it in record time. Minfi, along with Amazon, helped us to move quite fast in this scenario. Um, the migration was smoothless, a very seamless kind of thing. It was very smooth, and post that we saw a big improvement in performance from the transaction processing. So if we were taking, say, an example, a 3 second per transaction, we started doing it in 300 milliseconds kind of thing. That was the difference between the performance we saw, which was not only boils down to the way it was implemented, but the networking capability of Amazon compared to a typical data center. The fine tuning done by Minfi on various components, like Shankar said, they look at security on all levels. They also optimize on all levels. That helped us reduce the RTO and RPO, which are key factors for a bank when it comes to uh, looking at infra, looking at how it takes, what is the time it takes for us to move to a DR or move back to a DC. Also, like Satyajit mentioned, that it helped us with observability because the bank wanted to see their data. When it's in a data center, we get what do you say? We have to work within the box. That if the data center allows you, it will work. Otherwise, you have to get a third-party solution. Third-party solution might or might not work, and there is cost implication. With Amazon, their out-of-box services plus Minfield helped us with fine tuning the alerts. We can even go to the extent of telling the bank when their core banking is not working as expected, because if their core banking is not working as expected, affects our performance. because we are a layer which depends on their core banking. And the main key factor in migrating is we can give the bank visibility on their data and analysis on their data, meaningful analysis to tell them what is the inward remittance, what is the outward remittance, where are people transacting from, what are the normal response times, where do we see latency, whether they need to tweak it on their systems, or we can come up with a solution together to streamline the solution. Because as we spoke in before, the transactions are just going to increase. I don't see this going down. So we might be a billion now, we might be 10 billion. It will keep increasing. Thanks.
Thanks, Kalin. Thanks for sharing some statistics. And I think, yeah, I do agree. I think resilience is an extremely important metric, specifically in the FSI space. And Shankar, I think we know that as well from the FSI experience that we have. So, how did the disaster recovery setup, ensure rapid recovery, RPO, RTO, and resilience for Mobileways critical transactions, and how much of a role did automation play in this?
So availability is a key aspect, right? In this entire conversation, if you take a reference, right? So just think of a scenario where if any of the system goes down, right? There's going to be millions of people who get affected, right? They're just at a retail shop, right? They're transferring money to somebody. If it fails, the kind of customer experience which the bank would get, right, translate to mobileware as serving them, right? So if this fails, you will have angry CXOs, CIOs, coming again saying, "Hey, what happened?" So this is the topmost priority in this entire thing. So what we did is we actually established a geographically dispersed disaster recovery setup. So as per the RBI guidelines, right? So we'll have to have the DR region as well within the same region of the country. So AWS having the secondary region up and running now in Hyderabad really helped us to meet that parameter, right? So we set up the DR in the Hyderabad as a region. So one of the key thing here is that so we wanted to do everything in an automated fashion, right? Because when as much as possible you create resiliency in the architecture, the lesser the impact is going to be. In fact, working towards a near zero RPO, right, is what is our primary goal is. So what we did is from an automation perspective, we have done implemented automated failover. This mechanism actually helps in automatically switching the operations to the DR site in event of an outage or a disruption in the primary region, right? And this would ensure a seamless and a rapid transition without manual intervention. So everything happens, without a manual intervention. Not just about the failover, but also from a data replication perspective, we are doing a real-time data replication between the primary and DR sites, ensuring the DR environment is always having a current copy of till date, and this would minimize the restoring time, right, for both data and services, right, whenever there is some disaster happens. So from a failover script standpoint, we developed and deployed an automated failover script that triggers the failover process automatically when a certain conditions are met, right? So this kind of eliminate the need for manual intervention, reducing the time it took to switch from DR to the primary side. So, and the last thing, testing and validation, because it is not just about one-time setup. Mobileware they do undergo a periodic audit by RBI. It is not just one time. It's not that when you're onboarding a Mac, right, bank, you have to meet these guidelines. It's an ongoing process. So we do regular DR drills. We conduct regular disaster takeover drills to test the failover process, validate the data restoration procedure, right, whatever has been configured, right? So, and this would kind of also help us to redefine the DR and the business continuity plan if there is further scope. So, yeah, so this is our approach towards helping Mobileware to be resilient on their operations.
Thanks, Shankar. Yeah, so I think the summary is that I think we've all sort of been able to sort of add value in this partnership, of course, mobileware to the various banks, banks to the end users. I think Minfi to mobileware as a tech partner. And yeah, I think there were a lot of learnings that we got from this. So great to reminisce about the past and sort of feel happy about some tough decisions that were taken along the way, but it all worked out. I think we've just moved into our final segment with one question left for each of you, and that's going to be about the future now. So starting with you again, Satyajit, as a leader in the fintech space, as like I said, one of the innovators, early adopters, what advice would you like to give to other fintech companies considering digital transformation, cloud migration, and especially on the things that we spoke about, security, compliance, and scalability?
Sure. I think not as a leader, but I'll just advise from my experience and what we've gone through, and maybe as colleagues and people that we worked with all together. I mean, it's you've typically got to have a strategy in place. Migration to cloud is something which cannot be done overnight. You've got to plan your moves. You've got to plan and understand where you are. What sort of a product do you have? Where do you fit into it? The ecosystem is fairly robust. We understand there is a regulator which is coming up with certain solutions and or rather expectations, and therefore you have to go with those guidelines. But a properly drafted roadmap of your product strategy, whether it's supposed to be, because you could be a niche player and not necessarily have volumes, then you have to have a different platform or partnership, which again AWS can support, right? To be either high security, high compliant side of it. You could have a solution which is far, like for us, UPI has been doing extremely well with other digital payment solutions, where the ideal scenario for us was volume, scale, peak performance. We've like mentioned a little while back, maybe if you take us 10 years back, the decisions that we made were, I think Colleen and I, our constant conversation was that we've got to build something which will be able to scale. It'll work well. You will have the best features, but if it doesn't scale, it will never make your revenues from a transactional perspective. It will not help you go to the next level. And so we wanted to do whatever we could and take the partnerships in a way that the product would allow us to grow from a revenue perspective wise as well, right? I think the beauty of the cloud is that it allows us for scaling up seamlessly as your transactions grow. However, it's also essential to select a partner like AWS in this case, right? That can help you optimize your infrastructure. We spoke about it from both the cost as well as the performance side of it. Finally, I think just have a clear roadmap for cloud adoption, focus on building resilience, flexibility into your operations. Like I think all the questions and all the conversations that we had, right, from first question to now or first topic to now, is about scalability, about security, compliances, operational efficiencies. I think as a combination, and that's the greatness of this partnership, right? I mean, as an organization, we were a smaller company, but we took decisions to actually partner. You can't build everything internally. It doesn't make sense. It's my advice. I think people might have differing views, but my advice is look at your strengths, build your strengths, partner with people who have their strengths. They have their expertise, experience. Take that in consideration and take your decisions based on that. Depend a little, delegate a little, and grow significantly along the way, right? So that's, I think, how it could go. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we like to call that out internally, and that's the message that I take from you, Satyajit. I think build your strengths into superpowers
Yep.
and partner with people for everything else, right? So I think that's the
Couldn't have
mantra.
better. Yeah, couldn't have put better. So
Yeah. Carlin, I think looking ahead again, what are the ongoing activities that mobileware is focusing on, post migration? And, how does the future look like for ensuring continued security, compliance, and performance excellence?
Sure. So we have the basic thing for us post migration has been basically three pillars: security, compliance, and performance. With the increased number of security threats, cyber threats happening around, we'll be trying to move towards a zero trust architecture. And I think so that is where Minfi will be playing a pivotal role for us, which because once we get into that kind of mold will automatically help us with compliance, because compliance is just going to become more stringent, and we will have to be on our tiptoes for making sure that we deliver to the regulatory requirements. Besides that, I think Shankar already mentioned once, serverless is a thing to go, so that we would be slowly moving all our products into serverless and modernizing it. That would help us with scale as well as observability, which would be the way to go. And the last but not the thing would be getting into AI, so that AI plays a role in helping us and monitoring, alerting, as well as giving us a heads up when something might or might not go wrong, which would also might also use it in fraud management, etc., for new products. So that is in a nutshell how we see the future with AWS as well as with Minfi.
Thanks, Carlin. The last question to you, Shankar. I think you heard Satyajit and Carlin speak out about, how does the future look like? What's Minfi's role gonna be in ensuring that, we support as much in the future roadmap?
Yeah. So both of them mentioned about observability, right? So it's an area where we have a primary focus now, because so to start this with Amazon principle of anything can fail, right? So assume that anything can fail. So we are working with them to enhance their observability posture. I'm sure there is a lot of scope for improvement, right? So we want to ensure we are inculcating more metrics from a monitoring perspective. So this will help us to, it will actually help us to provide better insights, right, in terms of the system performance, user behavior, and what are the potential, issues which could happen, right? So move from a reactive monitoring to a proactive monitoring, right? So we're working with them. We will continue to improve on the observability side. And so we are very focused about improving the mean time to recovery, right? If something fails, how much time is gonna take for us to recover, right? As I mentioned earlier, these are about billions of transactions, right? 10-15 minutes of downtime would create a large impact to the bank that would have an ripple effect or adverse impact on mobileware, right? So we'll continue to work on it, and we are with Swayam capability of monitoring, right? So we want to ensure that from a security perspective, currently we are also part of those RBI audits. Whenever RBI audits happen, we are part of it. So we are trying to automate things towards that, where we don't probably show things in Excel, rather we inculcate those into our Swayam, right? From as a feature where you can kind of do a continuous monitoring of it, right? You don't do it one time that, okay, you have an audit scheduled it, you bring the Excel, you put things right, rather work more proactively. So this is an area where we would, we are collaborating with Mobileware, Carlin and team, right, to improve the posture. So build custom alerts and dashboards, right? So when it comes to observability, it's not just about availability of the infrastructure, right? It's about, across, right? So logging and end to end. So that's an area where we are working. And from a performance optimization perspective, we would continuously monitor the system performance, and identify areas for optimization, right? So we would probably use techniques like code optimization, database tuning, load balancing, right? Whichever is viable and feasible, right? Work with the engineering team and Carolyn's team, right, of Mobileware. So and that aspect is, how can we help Mobileware to onboard customers faster, right? So today they are working with X number of customers, and with the kind of growth rate what they're envisaging, this X is going to become 5X, 10X, or whatsoever, right? When they're going to onboard customers, how much of efficiency we can bring in with our past experiences. Now we are actually we onboarded one bank, and we are onboarding the second bank right now, with the lessons what we have learned, how we can inculcate this to our further opportunities or the further projects, right? So inculcating that into our the mechanisms what we follow from an infrastructure perspective onboard, right? Onboard through cloud formation templates, right? You try to automate as much as things possible. Don't do anything manual. You just run those Terraform or CloudFormation template scripts, right? So, and even from an audit perspective. So we're trying to be proactive and align with Mobileware as a strategic partner, right? Then just a traditional operational MSP. So so this is our long-term or ongoing plan, engaging with Mobileware from a continuous and from a growth standpoint.
Thank you, Shankar. I couldn't not notice the wide smile that Satyajit and Carlin had when, Shankar, you mentioned minutes and downtime in the same statement, right? I'm sure it must be giving a lot of them goosebumps. So, but thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Satyajit. Thank you, Carlin. Thank you, Shankar, for the amazing insights, for taking us through the journey. It was very fruitful. It's a blessed partnership that we've had, and we hope to continue it that way. It was a lot of fun, asking you questions, and I hope it was the same at your end to sort of give your insights, answer those questions. Would also want to thank the audience for being very patient, and I hope you got a lot of learnings from this session. Thanks again, Satyajit, Carlin, and Shankar, for your insights. And we'll now move to our Q&A session with the audience. So feel free to send in your questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Karan. Thank you.
It's the opportunity.